Baruch Hashem, this is the Daf Yomi for Friday. Rav Yehuda Shavar Le Korbana. Rav Yehuda sent a gift LaAvidarna Biyom Edam. Rav Yehuda sent a gift to Avidarna to Avidarna, who is a idolater, on their holiday, on their holiday, Yom Edam. Amar Yadana Bedu Apolcha Avodas Kocham. So how can he do it? The very first stop says you don't want to send them anything on their holidays, on their Yom Edam. So Rav Yehuda said, I know that they're not worshiping idols. So therefore, since he's not doing anything that day, it's okay. Amalei Rav Yosef, Vatanya Izu Ger Toshav Kol Shakibu Av B'fnei Shlosh Chaverim Shelo Avodah Zarah. It says Ger Toshav has to accept upon himself in front of three that he's not going to worship idolatry. But Avidarna has not gone in front of three, so how can you send anything to him? No, that's only with respect to allowing him to live, because you have to kill all the seven nations when you come to the land of Canaan. So that means to allow him to live, you have to do that. But to say that he's not an idolater, he doesn't need to do that. So therefore, I can send him a gift. Gemara says, but we have a different price that says, so excuse me, a statement in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that if you have a ger toshav who went 12 months without circumcising himself, without converting, he's going to be like a min of the idolaters, meaning to say, he's like every other idolater, even with regard to certain laws about saving them, etc. So we see from here that even if he doesn't worship Avodah Zarah, he's going to be considered like an idolater. So Avidarna should be considered like an idolater, even though, because he didn't convert. The Gemara says, "Oh no, Hasan could go into Kibbutz Olav Lamul V'Lamal." That's where he accepted upon himself to circumcise, but he didn't do it. And so, since he accepted upon himself to circumcise, but he didn't do it, it shows that he wasn't sincere. And so, therefore, we assume he didn't really renounce idolatry. Rava Amtile Korbanal Bar Sheshach Biyom Edam. Rava sent an offering to Bar Sheshach on his day of his festival. Amar Yadana Beidul Apolach Avodas Kocham. He says, I know he doesn't worship. Then Rava went and he found he found Bar Sheshach sitting in the bathhouse, covered up to his neck in roses. V'kaima zonos arumas kamei, and there were naked harlots standing in front of him. Amar lei, so Bar Sheshach said to Rava, "Is chuki agavno almadasi? Are you going to have this in the world to come, sitting in up to your neck in roses with harlots?" Amar lei, didana difa tvei mehai. He says ours is way better than this. So Amar lei, so Bar Sheshach says, tvei mehai miyav. Is there anything in the world better than this? He says, you have the fear of the king upon you. We won't have the fear of the king upon us. So Amarle, so Bar Sheshach says, what fear of the king do I have on me? So he says, I don't have any fear of the king. While they were sitting there, a messenger from the king arrived. He said, get up because the king needs you. So he had to get up because the king called him. So Kinafik v'azal amar, as Bar Sheshach went out, he said to him, Eno debayla mechsilchu bishusa tipaka. That the eye that wishes to see evil upon you, let it be detached. Basically, he was so impressed with Rava, so he praised him. Amarle Rava, Amen. Rava said Amen. Paka Eno de Bar Sheshach. As a result of this, Bar Sheshach's eye came out. He didn't realize that the curse would actually resound right upon him. So Gemara says, Amar Papa, Rava should have answered him from the following pasuk. Benos melacham bikurosecha nitva shegel imincha bekesem ofir, meaning to say that the Jews will have pleasures in the world to come. They'll be greater than the idolaters, because it says in the pasuk that the daughters of the kings will honor you, the queens will stand on top of you. So Amar Nachman Bar Yitzchak, he said he could have given him another thing. You can't even imagine the great things waiting for you. So he should have been able to answer that. So now the Mishnah said, that if you hired an idolater to do other work for you, and then he did yayin nesach, it's permitted. Doesn't mean even if he didn't Uh, do you mean to say even if he gave him those instructions during the day, he didn't wait till nightfall, that it's still going to be permitted to get benefit from that? For a mini, but didn't we learn that sochos polo? Let's say you hire the Brisa says you hire if idolater hires a Jewish worker, or to say Arab and at night he says to him, transfer the wine of the barrel from this place to this, transfer the yain nesach from one place to another. If he says it at night, schara mutter. If he says it after he did complete his workday, it's permitted. Time of the Amalei Tuesday Erev in. Cool Yomalo. That means only if he said it after nightfall will be permitted, and not during the day. Amalei. So Abai says Kitanan Nananas Nisin Erev Tuesday Erev Tanan, and that's what our Mishnah means. So Abai says you're right. The Raisa is actually the explanation of the Mishnah. Rava says no. Well, Kasha Hadar Amalei Havirli Meya Chavios B'Meya Prutos. One is where he said to him, "Give me over 100 barrels for 100 prutos." And therefore, in that case, and so in that case, it's going to be prohibited because it depends upon the ayines. One is when he said, "Transfer me each barrel for a pruta." So then it's going to be permitted, except for the amount that he actually did for the ayines. Gemara supports Rava's answer. Vatanya socher as a poem. Let's say you hire a worker. Amrlo, and you say to him, "Haverli meya chavios b'meya prutos." Transfer over to me 100 barrels for 100 coins. And you find one yain nesach barrel amongst them, it's all prohibited. But he says each barrel for a pruta, and he finds a barrel of wine amongst them, then it's going to be permitted. If somebody hires a donkey to bring yain nesach upon it, then it's going to be prohibited. So the Gemara says, well, we already had that case from the first clause where he said if you're hired to bring yain nesach, it's prohibited. Hasu amali. Why do we need that case? I know rachis, and it's the first clause of the Mishnah. Where it says seifa it's tzricha. No, we need it for the next clause. If you hire the donkey to ride on it, then even though the idolater puts his yain nesach on it, it's going to be permitted. Gemara says, do you mean to say that normally when somebody rents it, he doesn't have the right to put his wine on it, or a mini on it? But then we have in the Brisa somebody who hires a donkey, that the renter has the right to put his stuff on it, including his drink, his wine, etc. But if he wants to put more than his clothing in his flask and overload it, then it'll be a problem. But if the donkey driver who rents it, he's allowed to put on it. He can put on his barley and grain and his food for that day. But after that, it's prohibited. But we see from here, and when you rent it, the assumption is you can put your drink on it. So therefore, why is the yain nesach permitted under those circumstances? Amar Abai the login dina hulo suve. Yeah, sure. He has the right to put his flask upon it. Most of law. But if we wouldn't do it, would we say we're going to deduct from you that from the rental fee? No, we wouldn't say that. The Gemara says, once the Bryce's case, either shliach or mizban, if they're going through an area where there's food that's available, chamar nami la'akiv, then the donkey driver should be able to stop the renter from putting the animal with food. Either low, shliach or mizban, and if there's not food to buy, socher nami lo la'akiv, then he can't stop the renter. Amar papa otzricha the shliach or mitrach or mizban may. Avno. Their stuff is available, but from one day's journey to the next. With respect to a donkey driver, he goes and buys food each night, so therefore he can only put a full day on. But the renter doesn't typically do that, so therefore he could put for the entire journey. More as a story. So the father of Acha was the son of Ravika. He was pouring wine into a wineskin for idolaters, and then he would go and ferry the wine across the river. And then they would give him earthenware barrels as payment. Also, Amalei Abaye. So then they came and told Abaye about this, and they said he's working with Yain Nesach. So Amalei Abaye says no, ki katarach pater katarach. When he was initially pouring it in, it wasn't yet prohibited because it hadn't yet touched the bottom. The bottom. So Vaharotza Bekuma, but doesn't it? He wanted to remain in existence. The Gemara says no. The loan is true chazike. Didn't he want to remain in existence so that the wouldn't split? Why is it allowed? So Gemara says to masni ba'adano. No, he would make a condition. He would say if it splits, then you have to pay me other money. Or inami the maisu pristika ba'dayo, that they would bring empty vessels with them. And that's what they would save any wine that spilled so that they have backup. But he was transferring it across the river. He's being paid for that, and that's taking their yain nesach. No, he would tell the ferryman beforehand to take it, and so therefore he didn't do it directly. Inami dinikite be kitre. No, they had special ropes which they identified to the ferryman, and so therefore. Basically, all he did was he give the buyers special ropes, which they would recognize that they had passage. And so since he didn't do it directly, it was okay. So he didn't take them across. So we had to change that text. Up to the next Mishnah. Yain nesach shenafal gabi anavim. If you have yain nesach that fell into grapes, yidichein ve'mutaros. Under those circumstances, you can wash them off and it's going to be permitted. Then by vukos, but if the grapes are already cracked, asur, they'll be prohibited. Nafal gabi te'enim or gabi tomorrow. Let's say the wine fell into figs or onto dates. If there is enough in them to give flavor onto the figs or onto the grapes, also it's going to be prohibited. Ben Zonan, Shevi Grogros Besfina. He was once, Baitus Ben Zonan was once, or Ben Zonan was once bringing the figs in a ship. And the barrel of wine of Yain Nesach broke, and it fell on top of them. The Shol Chachamim Viturim, and they asked the Chachamim and they allowed it. And this is a general rule. Whenever the flavor is giving taste is to its benefit, it's prohibited. But whenever you don't get benefit by that flavor that's imparted, it's permitted. Like vinegar that would have been prohibited that fell onto beans. So therefore, since we don't want the vinegar on the beans, it's permitted. Mara says, Maisel is store, but this incident is contradicting the initial ruling because the first ruling is that if the yain nesach falls on the figs or dates, they're prohibited. And then it says that there was an incident where he brought the dried figs and the barrel of wine fell on it, and he said it's permitted. So the Mishnah is missing some words. This is the case we read it. If it's giving off a bad taste, it's mutter, it's permitted. And that's indeed the taste, the law of maybe grogros besfina, and the shabar chavash yain nesach and that's indeed the case. There was a pile of wheat, to barrel of yain nesach spilled on it. Rava allowed them to sell it. So he challenges, let's say you have a garment, you have a thread of koyim that was lost in the garment. Basically, a woolen thread was woven into linen garment, and you can't find it now. William Karena, you're not allowed to sell it. You can't get any benefit from it. You can make it into a blanket. But you can make it a shroud for a mace mitzvah. So why can you do that? Because the dead do not have any mitzvahs anymore. So the prohibition of koyim doesn't apply. And the other cases, there's a concern that a Jew might come to wear, but nobody's going to benefit from the shrouds of the mace mitzvah. What's the reason why you can't do it to an idolater? He might come to sell it to a Jew. Well, if that's the case, why are you allowed to allow the wheat that the yain nesach fall on it? You might come and sell it to a Jew. who might eat it even though without realizing that it's yain nesach. Gemara says, "Hadar sharu metzchenu mafnidim." He permitted the owner to grind them and to bake them with abuni of chavim shalom b'nei Israel, and then to sell them as bread, not in the presence of a Jew. So there's no concern that the Jew is going to buy the bread from the idolater, because at that time nobody was eating the pas akum. But if he was sold in front of a Jew, it would be prohibited. Gemara says, but Tanan. But then we were in the Mishnah, Yain Esach Shenafal Gabi Anav. And then we were in the Mishnah that if you have Yain Esach fall on grapes, just wash it off. Permitted, so if it's not cracked, it's not prohibited. So why in this case is there this concern? So Shani Amra Papa Shani Chiti Yehovah Agav Tzurayu can move close. I mean, the wheat is always considered like it's cracked, so we assume that the taste was absorbed. Okay, this is the daf yomi for Friday, and we were stopped. Baruch Hashem.